All right, hi, welcome to the AfroSurreal Writers Reading. I'm going to be your moderator, Brent Lambert. So it is my pleasure and privilege today to be with this group of fine Black writers. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep it simple. We'll hear from all of them. They'll all read something from their works, and we won't have any questions, unfortunately, just because, for time's sake. But if you do have things you do want to ask them and you just feel like you have to, drop it in the chat because we've already discussed at some point having a future Q&A for people. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Our first reader is going to be Desi Lenc. She is based in Santa Cruz. Her fiction examines the power of unforeseen yet felt forces of the everyday, while her nonfiction focuses on the tangible solutions of nonprofits and socially conscious businesses. Her blog, Outcasts Mag, celebrates the unique contributions that artists, eco-friendly businesses, business owners, and nonprofits offer to their communities. Without further ado, Desi, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brent. Happy Sunday, everybody. Today I'm going to be reading the first half of my short story, The Festival of Crescente. So here it goes. Each spring, rows upon rows of roses in hues of peach, lemon, dragon fruit, and cream blossomed on the Wellsbourne Orphanage estate. The maze of cherry blossoms to the west of the school served as the children's playground, while the vegetable gardens and fruit trees supplied nutrient-rich food. Every day, the kids arose, put on their olive and beige uniforms, and spent the day working in the gardens, preparing meals, and maintaining the grounds side by side. Many of the children lived at Wellsbourne before the war and only gathered snippets of what life was like outside the estate from newcomers. Though the war occurred 2 years ago, numerous families were still separated. Those who weren't required to fight and couldn't birth children themselves relied on artificial insemination to form families. The low amount of adoptions caused city orphanages to overflow with children. As a result, more room and board were needed, with Wellsbourne being the ideal orphanage to be placed. The waitlist for admission to the estate, overlooking miles of lush rolling hills, grew longer every year, which is why Wellsbourne downsized each spring with the Festival of Crescente. At the turn of the season, no matter the age, 5 children were weeded out. In their place, 5 new kids would come to Wellsbourne to observe the nourishment the estate provided. No one knew who'd be caught, but some wondered if the ravens, which perched about, overseeing the children, knew. Did they take satisfaction in observing the soon-to-be-caught innocently enjoying their last year at Wellsbourne? One child, Kia, couldn't ignore the ravens. She felt their presence as she played and knew they watched her from outside her window when she awoke. Sometimes one would come from seemingly nowhere, flying low to the ground, grazing her ear, serving as a reminder that she was never free from the future. She remembered how the caught came back for one last goodbye to Wellsbourne. Their bodies sagged as the ravens retrieved them from their hiding spot. Kiana, Kia's friend, was doomed to wander at last year's festival. After the alarm stopped, Kia came from the basement and into the front of the school. "Everything is so beautiful," Kiana cried, admiring the flaming cherry tree. "Kiana, they caught you. What happens when they find you?" she asked, afraid to get too close. Kiana's eyes, murky, like rice water, searched in Kia's direction. She began a laugh that sprung from deep within her chest and shook her body. "I'm free. It's not scary, Kia. I spoke to them, and I know where to go," Kiana said, walking towards Kia. Kia took a step back, which Kiana saw and stopped. Kia perceived a change in her friend. Why wasn't she afraid to leave Wellsbourne anymore? The laugh swelled in Kiana again as she looked back at the gardens. That night, Kia couldn't sleep because Kiana's frosty eyes filled her vision whenever she moved hers. Where did the caught wander after the festival? The uncertainty of it all made it hard for Kia to breathe at times. She perceived from the top of the hill, farms in the distance, where the orphanage received its meat and dairy. No one could forget its presence since the smell of manure often wafted up to the school, interrupting the scent of roses, reminding everyone that there were other ways of life out there. Kia read about faraway places whenever in the library. She often lingered on books set near the sea, at first thumbing through them, eventually finding a corner to read in where she could immerse herself in the setting. Something about stories with sea settings made her feel less fearful. The Festival of Crescente was to begin in the next 5 hours. Today was the first day of no rain, and in the early morning warmth, the hummingbirds darted from cherry blossom to cherry blossom. However, no children meandered in the gardens today. No one roamed the halls, decorated with white and pink streamers dancing in the breeze. Most stayed in bed, though their minds raced with thoughts of the festival. The only sound piercing the heavy silence were the caws of the ravens. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Desi. That was great. That was great. So, like I said, interest of time, we're just going to keep it rolling here. So our next reader is Jenee Darden. Jenee Darden is an award-winning journalist, author, and mental health advocate. A prissy nerd from Oakland. She blogs at cocofly.com. I love that website name. Her book, When the Purple Rose Blooms, is a collection of essays and poetry about her experiences with Black womanhood. Jenee has reported for NPR, the LA Times, Refinery 29, and other outlets. And without further ado, I will let Jenee go ahead and start a reading.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the intro. Thank you to everyone for organizing this. Fairy tales. He sings like a beauty, but is a beast at breaking hearts. He who shall not be named, a Pied Piper, I dance to his song too long. He's magnificent at being maleficent. I thought I was woke to dudes like him. Maybe I was in a deep sleep of denial, or just hooked, or what I mistook for love. There was really some mythical, screwy wonderland where I fell down a deep hole, landing in never. I pray I never, ever, ever meet a man who melts my heart, then turns me into an ice queen. Poor me, he has no soul. I won't stay silent about how he did me wrong. So many nights the clock strike 12, he's still on my mind, my heart. I want to get rid of him, wish him away. I just haven't figured out how to make him say his name backwards. Alosa, Alosa, Alosa. And Alosa is spelled Elohssa. So you can spell that backwards. All right. My strength. This is dedicated to Nia Wilson, who was the young girl, the 18-year-old girl that was killed on BART a few years ago. My strength is not a choice or your over-exaggerated expectations of some fable you read. I am not made of vibranium. Who told you dark skin don't bruise or black bones don't shatter? My strength is not a choice. My sass is not here for your amusement or your imitation. It's fun playing black girl, learning my slang from Twitter, huh? Your costume doesn't come with invisible bullseyes over your head, between your legs, on your back, and those are just a few I know of. Where are you when the blood sheds? Riding the outbound train? You're never around when the blood sheds. My strength is not a choice. I'm neither here to serve you nor to save you. I don't carry your problems and the weight of the world in a small clutch for Saturday night. Don't believe the myth. I am not here to make sacrifices, feeding me scraps from a trough so you can eat from silver platters, then gorge on my soul does not serve humankind. Find another mule. My strength is not a choice, but a life strategy passed down, sometimes a shield or an invisible cloak wrapped around my suffering, although it's you that erase me. Somebody see me, so one day they won't have to say my name. And that's in my book, When a Purple Rose Blooms. And I'll read one more piece. And this was inspired by when I was a kid, I had like the biggest crush on Superman. And I grew up in East Oakland. And I was like, Superman had never come to Oakland. And I actually met an actor who played Superman in Oakland. So Superman has been to Oakland, just to let y'all know. And this is called Kiss Me Like the First Time. Step inside my office, close the door behind you, be uncomfortable with my silence. and the uncertainty of our future, forget about the deadlines for a moment. Try to make things better as you always do. Take off your glasses, ease me closer. I slide my finger between the gap under your shirt and graze the letter S underneath with my nails. Ease me in closer, chest to muscles. Kiss me. Kiss me like the first time. When you flew to my second floor apartment in East Oakland late that summer night, you pulled back the metal bars as if they were curtains, pushed out the screen, reached out your hand and said, "Fly with me." What? I said. I didn't understand. Fly with me. Ride the wind with me. I slid off my slippers and my bonnet, took your hand and rode the wind. Over the Coliseum, then to the hills, around the redwoods, then to downtown and the Tribune Tower, gliding until we reached the Bay Bridge, floating between the shimmering bridge lights and the dark sea and the moon. The wind tickled my bare feet. Your cape flaps in the wind. You kissed me in the middle. Excuse me. You kissed me in the middle of an open, beautiful black sky. Made me feel like I'm worlds away, but right at home at the same time. You kissed me like everything is okay. Kiss me like that again. Lean in closer, lips to lips. Kiss me so good until my feet lift off the ground and we know we can get above this. Kiss me. I'll never forget. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Yeah, that was an awesome reading. You mind holding up the book again so we can all see?
Sure. I apologize. I had to clear my throat.
It's all right.
Let me clear my throat.
All right, so y'all check this book out. There's a link in the chat the way you can go buy it. So please do. I know I will be now. That was a great reading.
Thank you.
So moving right along, our next person that we're going to have reading is Kyla Marshell. So Kyla Marshell is a writer whose work has appeared in The Guardian, Gawker, BuzzFeed, O Magazine, and elsewhere. She has earned fellowships from Cave Canem and the MacDowell Colony, a Spelman College and Sarah Lawrence MFA graduate. She is working on an AfroSurreal memoir, A Seed is a Star. With that said, Kyla, I will let you take it away and start the reading.
Thank you, Brent. This is my first virtual Zoom pandemic reading, so that's exciting. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, coming in, staying in, etc. I'm going to read an excerpt from the memoir I'm working on, which is called A Seed is a Star. And it's about trying to be in touch with my distant ancestors and also my distant descendants. So I'm going to read an excerpt about when I went to see the house where my great-great-grandmother lived, which happens to be not that far from where I currently am in Brooklyn. So her name was Susie Winder Cisco, and she died in 1948 in Brooklyn, and she was from the Eastern Shore of Virginia. The house on Rockaway Ave was about 2 miles away, so I decided to walk. It was head east on Fulton for a while, then south on Rockaway. These neighborhoods, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, East New York, were still largely untouched by gentrification. Whole lots teemed with sky-high weeds, signs on how to buy and develop, but the area was still mostly condo and cafe-less. Perhaps that's why I never came this far east or south. I didn't know anyone or anything over here. As I turned onto Rockaway, I saw the two-story, two-sided house. This is it. This is the house. This is Susie Cisco's house. I look up at the windows of the upstairs apartment covered in purple paisley sheets. This spot where I stand, she must have looked down upon from that second-story window in 1948, her long gray hair plaited into a braid swirled atop her head, thinking about what she'd left behind in Virginia. The lower level holds a sweet-smelling beauty supply store in what used to be a medical office. I peer into the wide front window of the office, abandoned magazines splayed across the waiting room tables. The front door to 720 is ajar, so I invite myself in, to see and feel the very ground she once trod upon. The inside door leading to the upstairs apartment is unlocked too. It doesn't even have a knob. I am momentarily tempted. What was the likelihood of me getting shanked or shot or Lord knows what else if I yoo-hooed up the steps to see what I could find? Hi, my great-great-grandmother used to live here. Do you mind if I poke around? My curiosity could only take me as far as that first door. My good sense escorted me out. I have seen it. I have gone as far as I can go. I snap a few pictures of Susie's building and pull out the death certificate again. 720 Rockaway is not only where she lived, I see, but where she died. It is looking at the certificate this time more closely than I did before that I read that she'd lived here only the last few months of her life. But that can't be. Hadn't she migrated with the rest of the family, the rest of Black America, looking for a new start? By now, I know that just because it's in ink doesn't mean it's true. But this is maybe true, that Susie didn't come here to start her life, but to end it. She came up here because she was ill, and her son Thomas was the one to take care of her. My great-great-grandmother in her life in Brooklyn was not the name-taking city slicker I had imagined, but a woman elderly before her time, trying to live out her final days in peace. Did it matter that she had lived in Brooklyn, but only kind of? She was still my ancestor, but the precedent for how I imagined I'd come to this place through some magnetic ancestral pull was different than I'd imagined. Turning circles in front of the house, I read the certificate over and over, hoping to catch any more details I may have missed. And there it was, 1865 Fulton Street. That was the address for Farley's funeral home, where Susie had been taken after she died. The number, besides being memorable for the intonations of the year, was familiar because it seemed close to where I lived. I pulled out my phone and searched, and there it was, now a housing project, half a dozen blocks from my home. I had passed it on my way here. I could pass it on my way back. All this time, had there been a remnant of Susie Cisco right under my nose? Walking back, I circled the complex of projects, trying to find the right building. It stood right at the corner, under a canopy of plane trees, the building number emblazoned onto the brick wall. I clasped my hands together and just enough, perceptible to only me, bowed. The house on Rockaway, while certainly not as far as the Eastern Shore, was still several miles from me, but here was something right in the nook of my life. From that moment on, lingering at that intersection, looking east, deeper into Brooklyn, I'd think Winderland. Brooklyn was where Susie, my great-grandfather Thomas, my grandmother and her sisters had all briefly lived, where distant cousins Corinne and Junius had lived, where Joseph Winder IV, a blood relative we didn't know, but who was the fourth of a common ancestor, had lived, where some of my great-great-grandmother Mama Eula's children, like Ruth and Clint, had lived, where dozens, it seemed, of my Virginia relatives had migrated to. Born Northampton County, Virginia, died Brooklyn, New York. This was the common refrain from the homemade genealogy books at the reunion and from all of my research. I used census records and city directories to find their addresses, and when I did, I bookmarked them in my Maps app, a little star marking each location so that when I pulled it up, a full constellation of my family appeared, welcoming me here where I, unbeknownst to them, unimaginable, had chosen to live. Just beyond the next intersection, the next train stop. No wheat, no chaff, no dusty roads to mark the way, but still that familiar terrain I'd been searching for. Now I could say it. Here too, another place where my history pooled, another home. Thank you.
That was great. That was definitely appreciate that. Everyone, again, the memoir that's currently being worked on is A Seed is a Star. So pay attention because it will be on your bookshelf at some point. So just go ahead and give it up for Kyla. All right, so who we have next is Raina. So Raina J. Leon, say it right?
Leon.
Leon. See, I knew I was gonna mess it up. But anyway.
Thank you for asking. No worries.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna check in. Gotta do my people right. All right, so PhD, make sure we say that, is the author of the poetry collections Canticle of Idols, Boogeyman Dawn, and Sombra Dislocate, and the chapbooks Perfetta Without Refuge, and Areto to Atabe, Essays on the Mothering Self. She is a founding editor of the Acentos Review. She is a full professor of education at St. Mary's College of California, only their third Black person to achieve this rank. So that's amazing. Yeah, I'm already impressed. So, but I'm sure I'll be more impressed after the reading. So I'm going to go ahead and give it up to you and let you take it away.
Thank you, Brent. I'm so happy to be with you all today. I'm going to read from some flash fiction that I am experimenting with. This one is called System Failures. There is an alley down a silent street in a long, silent city. On a clay plate set in the earth, one can still read the name. It had been nearly smoothed away by the foot traffic of 200 years. A brief interest in Black people's history led to a trace of the chiseling and the placement of a preserving glass. That period was a blink. Now even the glass has its own grime momentarily clarified by the occasional acid rain that still falls. There may be no human life. The earth abandoned for other earths many years ago by those who could go, leaving those who couldn't, to the aching of the world. Weather still changes, though more drastically by the hour. The electrified air is the first sign of the tornado forming itself in bluster on the horizon. No need for magic workers anymore, when the earth calls forth the spirits of the dead for its own telling. Still, this is the most lively alley of the cities that remain. The hand-formed bricks held together with rough plastering, the masons were free Black men in a city in which they held rough truce with those who debated their humanity at the start of a nation that no longer matters. In this alley, which was special to them, though narrow and forgotten to others, a way opened between a church which was their own, for their own people, and the place where escaped slaves, the freedom fugitives, were buried under names they chose for themselves. The white people knew it as Bright Hope, but the Black folks called it Whisper. Because if you stood on a cloud-covered night there alone between those hallowed grounds, a spirit might come to tell you their story. They say the bricks made it so, imprinted as they were with the hands of the masons, and every Black person of a generation, born free or born in bondage, who found themselves taking refuge and making a life in that city. Every person of every age. The tornado bears down through the red sky with its cloud swirl and its slinging lightning. Anyone would miss the whispers for all the cacophony of nature. When the city was alive, it was the rare human who heard the voices for a time above the normal traffic sound, or outpouring drunken revelry from those shortening their lives at the local bars while the world was starting to burn. In a dead city, on a dead world, only the storm is louder than the whispers. They say, people gonna know what this hand can do, even if they don't know my name. I push it hard in this clay, redder than this tongue. It will speak when I can't speak. Remember, remember, remember. Or Abigail in this X, Abigail who is 4 years old. The circle is for Delilah, her mother. We will always be together, no breaking us apart. X in this O, Elijah was taken from my arms, and where he is, I don't know. He would be 10 now. I pray for him and make my mark. He might find me here. Or Robert Malcolm Mason, or Felix Mason, or Reverend Thomas Freeman, the second pastor of All Souls in his kingdom, or I killed a man to be a man, George. And 659 other voices, signs, stories to be imagined, but what does it matter now when the world turns to dust? We who were color left behind to color the world in hate songs while the white people took their rockets to explore. On the day the earth began to die, Alta Gracia, whose people were conquistadores, and all the peoples and lives they stole, whose only home was this alley. Watch the rocket trails fill the sky. Watch white comets rise and rise until she could barely see the specks as they exploded, one by one. An unexpected meteor shower. A natural fireworks show, the least among them, the ones constructed with the stripped down parts and held together in struggle, the ones with mostly the poor and marginalized, they made it through and flourished. They made a way from no way, lifetimes in fruition, truly what the ancestors dreamed and beyond, and they left, and she rocked and laughed and wept until she slept into a new plane, opening the door she never knew was possible, dreaming that she heard voices in the alley and the quick stomps of feet trying to silence them and failing. Thank y'all.
That was really good, Raina. So we also have a link in the chat to Raina's book, Per Feather Without Refuge. Be sure to check it out. Get those purchases in. We want to support our authors. So thank you again for a great reading. Just yeah, really appreciate you being here today. So next up we have is Sumiko Saulson.
Saulson, not Slauson.
Oh Lord, okay. Well, I apologize in advance because I knew it. I was gonna get it right. Things that go bump in my head. All right, so I'm gonna mention all of that too. So, she is an award-winning author, multicultural sci-fi and horror editor of Black Magic Women, Sky of Lust, Black Celebration, and Wickedly Able. 2016 HWA StokerCon Scholarship from Hell Award recipient. I like the name of that. Has an AA in English and writes Writing While Black for the San Francisco Bay View, a national Black newspaper. Horror writers, you guys are another level of talented, and I am always jealous of y'all. So I am looking forward to this reading. I will let you take it away.
Okay, so I'm reading poetry. This is Killer Romance. People love, you know. We do love untrue love, and there are puppies and kittens, chubby babies who don't have bows and arrows, all trivialized in February. That was my grandfather's birthday, because they are now iconic representations of an infatuation more impure than the sweet-smelling rose we chose to kill to represent incense sickly sweet. I have allergies. It makes me sick. It reeks like a grape-flavored cigarillo, and I know that you know when it lies. I like the natural look of love. You know the way it is. I said I was tired, and you didn't keep me up all night, almost like you recognized that I was a human being with needs like sleep. To me, that is love, but I am not romantic. It makes me sick. Like if sex is good, you don't always have to talk about it. You're too busy doing it, and love is like that. If you do love, true love, not just constantly hot new love, it's real. Like a kitten, not a card. Like a baby, not a cupid. Like a grandpa, not a holiday. Like a real live rose bush. It lives because you tend it, like a garden. I water my garden. I don't just write poems to it. And then the other one is from Spit and Pathos, which is a more recent book of poetry. And it's about my ex who died. Crumb Cake, his name was Gregory Hug. Crumb Cake. Love, life, lost, broken, and scattered dust. Shattered little pieces of you in thimble-sized vials and canisters. Tiny silver hearts sent to loved ones. Tokens of remembrance now that you are gone. Dusty tomes about ashes to dust. The ashes and dust of the two of us. Your body in tins and plastic bins. Odds and ends of the life of you. Crumbs of your flesh reside here beyond death. They arrived in a cardboard box. It was claimed by your cat. I had to remove the box. Uzi tore it to shreds, trying to get you out of there. Reunited in death, master and pet, your cat, tiger, lily, closer yet in a box like your box, by your box on an old desk. Like the one where you sat, chain smoking cigarette. Ashes and ashtrays piled high, debris of your disease, depression. I guess that I will live with you forever as you wanted me to in life. Forever my fiance, though I'll never be your wife. I live here with ghosts of our many days and your body in pieces and all four cats, two living, two dead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. So this covers our first half of the reading. We're ahead on time, so I can actually ask a couple of questions of our readers and get some of their thoughts on writing in general and whatnot. So I'll just start off with you, Sumiko, since I have you on the spotlight right now. So what kind of drew you to horror as a genre?
Both of my parents were huge horror fans. As a matter of fact, my mom was really pissed off at my dad because he took her to see Rosemary's Baby while she was pregnant with me. So that was pretty much of it right there. I'm 52. I grew up in the 70s, so parents didn't shield their kids as much. So me and my brother would be out there playing in the playground, like at the front, while they had like Rosemary's Baby and not Rosemary's Baby. They had It Lives and Jaws and all this other like really scary stuff. And I started reading earlier because I was an advanced reader, and Peter Straub and Stephen King were amongst the first writers that I was reading in like sixth grade. So that would be it.
All right, yeah, no, that's Rosemary's Baby. That's pretty funny. So like, are you currently working on anything horror related, or
I am currently working on a sci-fi horror novel, which is a sequel to my first novel, Solitude, and I'm also working on a paranormal romance called Akmani.
Okay, all right, awesome. Looking forward to seeing those out there in the world. All right, so I'm gonna circle back to the beginning and go to Desi. And so Desi, looks like your background was kind of nature field out there. So like, is that just kind of like when you write, do you have to be in a certain place to write, or?
I love the morning time and just that quiet time in the morning. But nature definitely does help me out a lot. I love going on hikes whenever I'm just like stumped on something, and my mind can kind of just like wander as I wander through the woods, or I just feel like less stressed when I'm in nature. So I definitely need it for creativity, for sure.
Oh, that makes sense. So like, cause you could just soak it all in. So with your writing, like, is there a specific type of writing that you like to do? Long form, short form, poetry, or do you kind of like mellow in?
I definitely like short stories, and I'm working on a novel right now. I haven't done too much poetry, although I would love to incorporate poetry in my writing just because it's so beautiful and lyrical. But I definitely like short stories, and I like creepy speculative fiction. I also like horror. I grew up watching horror movies, and Tim Burton is like one of my favorite directors and writers, and so I like to incorporate that too into my work.
Yeah, Tim Burton is a good person. I mean, besides the fact he won't cast black people, but other than that, like, he's a good inspiration to draw from. He has a crazy imagination, but yeah.
Yes, I have to make my own art with black people, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Desi. So I'm gonna come to Jenee next. Got a couple of questions for you, Jenee. So I kind of just immediately pick up like you just have a great personality just from the reading. Like, how do you in what ways do you bring like yourself into your work?
Well, I guess I bring myself into my work because I write a lot about my experiences in life. So a lot of the things that I write about are just inspired by things that I've seen, done, or experienced. And that's the cool thing about like Afro-surrealism is like you can expand your imagination with telling, those experiences. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I could just feel it when you were reading. I was like, oh yeah, this is personal, but it's being expressed in a very creative way. So I know you showed us your book, but like, is there anything you're currently working on, or?
Well, I'm a journalist, so right now all the stuff that's happening, so I'm working on COVID stories.
Yeah.
Stories on the uprisings right now. I'm also I interviewed Sumiko for KLW, which is where I work. So in case putting the link in the chat to that. So if you all want to learn more about her, I interview artists. So that's something that I do every week.
Okay.
Is I interview a different artist in the Bay. And so, yeah, so like you can always check that out, klw.org. Just put in
Okay.
my name and you can see all my stories pop up.
Awesome. I mean, I'm loving learning about all these black writers I didn't know about before. So I'm definitely about to be hopping on some buy links because you guys are doing such an amazing job. So
Yeah.
uh
Thanks for
thank you.
hosting
Yeah,
me.
again, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So I think I'm gonna go to Kyla next, and I'm gonna ask her a couple of questions here. So Kyla, with I know you said you have an AfroSurreal memoir that you're working on. So without spoiling, because I'm sure you don't want to do that, how are you bringing like AfroSurrealism into that work?
Well, I'm really through doing this genealogy project, which is like kind of like on the surface, it's kind of just like, this is a story about my great great grandmother, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm also interested in, I've been studying like astrophysics and different kinds of theories on time, because basically that allows us to think about the fact that we can kind of be in many different times and places at once. And our perception of what the now is really just a perception. And so I've been using that as kind of like a theme and a framework of thinking about being like something that somebody once imagined hundreds of years ago, and also being like, I am someone's ancestor, and the way that I'm trawling about cemeteries and going to people's houses and stuff, and they never met me or met my mother even 100 years from now or whatever, somebody could be like in my apartment right now and being like, my great great grandmother lived here, and I know these 5 things about her. So I'm just trying to think about like all of the different ways that I can be in communication and be in touch and be in relationship to people in non-traditional, non-physical ways.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a lot of work. So with the genealogy, like how because I know that's kind of difficult sometimes for the Black diaspora, specifically here in America, trying to like get into genealogy. So like, have you hit any roadblocks with that, or like have you discovered things that you weren't aware of from doing all this research? Or
Yeah, I mean, the things that I've discovered honestly have been via oral history more so than via records, and so that's been more powerful. Like I got to see the house where like my 4th, 5th, and 6th great grandmothers all once lived. Like this is going back to people born in the 1700s, but I'd found that through a weird circuitous way. But it was through a distant relative who knew where the house was and knew stories about like how these people's lives and what they looked like and things they said and did. But that stuff was passed down. It wasn't on ancestry.com. So it required, physical digging and journeying and driving places and such. But that's been kind of the fun of it, is being like on a real kind of like mystery treasure hunt.
yeah, that feels like it's just such a rewarding experience of like self-discovery. So it's really making me interested in the memoir. So I'm looking forward to it coming out. And again, thank you for being here. We definitely appreciate it. All right, I'm going to circle to Raina now. I'm going to ask her a
Hey.
couple of questions here. So, um, what you read was kind of like it was speaking to something. So, like, what inspired those pieces?
So I wrote that actually a while back, and it was like, okay, this earth is messed up. We gotta think of something else. But also thinking about like this tension with the natural world and where we are, and being at an intersection of disaster, and and two, being in this space of like Black people, Black women especially, always, and it's talked about many times in articles and personal narratives, like being called upon to save somebody, right? And always being this person on which so much weight is placed, and being like, no, it's we're not going to do that anymore. So and envisioning a way forward, and a rioting of the natural world to allow for that transition, that new world, that new imagining, that transition to something else to happen, as disastrous as it is. So, and yet there are also these hidden stories too within that, of like what can be written in brick and still persist in spirit and call out. And I think that there is concordance, there's connection with many of the folks here. Kyla speaking to this circuitous route of coming to ancestral stories, right? And whether that plays out in fiction or in our lived stories in our memoir. And I love, Kyla, what you're thinking about as far as time. I'm so excited. And I know that there's so many folks who are also in this space of thinking about ancestry as well as descendancy, as I hear my toddler screaming in resistance of sleep. But yeah, that's where it came from.
That's yeah, like I was kind of feeling some of those vibes, but you articulated it so much better than what I was thinking. So thank you. So second question though. So since you are dealing with like some topics that are kind of heavy in terms of like the world and the state it's in, has it been difficult to write and be imaginative with everything that's happening right now? Because I know a lot of writers have been struggling with that.
For sure. I am also the mother of a newborn. My daughter is 5 weeks old as of yesterday. And so there is an urgency about writing and documenting this time for her, as well as for my son, and trying to also be mindful of pandemic and time of crisis and revolution and reckoning and rising and reshaping and reimagining, all of the R's. But also thinking about like, how can I recognize and treasure and document the joy of our lives too, and the joy of imagining a new world. So that urgency is pushing through more of my anxiety and resistance to these times, right?
Yeah,
so I'm writing a lot.
It's been all over the board with people I've talked to in terms of like being able to produce and not being able to produce. So yeah. I think any answer was the right answer to that. But yeah, the urgency that makes so much sense, especially thinking about having children in the mix. So that's something to think about. I think I have covered our first half of readers. So thank you again, Raina, for being here. Much appreciated. There's going to be an interlude. We're going to have a musical interlude with Arthur Flowers. So go ahead, stick around for that. And then we will have the next half of our readings.
Thank you, Brent. So on that note, I'm going to cue up a musical selection that was sent in to us by Professor Arthur Flowers. Just going to see if I can get that to play on this end. And
would you want me to read the bio for Arthur real quick while you're getting it ran up?
Sure.
Okay, so yes, Arthur Flowers is a novelist and creative nonfiction author of The Hoodoo Book of Flowers, Another Good Loving Blues, Mojo Rising, I See the Promised Land, and Bear Rabbit Retold. Blues-based performance artist, practitioner of literary hoodoo, former executive director, Harlem Writers Guild, professor emeritus, Syracuse University, MFA fiction. Now you can take it away.
All right, see if this works.
One day he dissed Brer Rabbit. Back in the day, Brer Alligator had that smooth and pretty skin that made him feel superior to other folk. One day he dissed Brer Rabbit, and it really don't do to diss the rabbit. So the next day, here come Brother Rabbit, looking at his watch, and he talking about, I'm late, I'm really, really, really Now everybody knows you don't ask no rabbit talking about he late. What he late for unless you're ready to go through the looking glass. But Alligator, he's a curious man. He said, where to, Rabbit? But Rabbit said, I'm going to be trouble. He said, surely you know trouble. Trouble's a big man in these parts. He owns all the land. But Alligator said, somehow sounds like somebody I need to know. You mind if I tag along? But Rabbit said, sure. Bring the family. So he takes the Alligator family down by the riverside, that big field down by the riverside. They said, y'all wait right here. I'm gonna go get in trouble. Then he goes over to the other side of the field and he starts a great big fire. And the Alligator family can see the flames, but all that pretty red, yellow, and orange packaging, it dazzles them bad. And they think in my mind, don't trouble look fine. So they standing there and they're waiting on trouble. And by that fire's got them surrounded. And they feel the heat of the flames. And they're allowed that it's time to move. And they are right next to the water. Right next to the water. But to get to the water, they must go through the fire. They got to go through the fire. They got to go through the fire. So the Alligator family, they scoot through the fire and into the water. And they get away. But they get all scorched up. And that's why to this day, when you see Brer Alligator, he gonna have a wrinkled up skin. And when you see Sister Alligator, she ain't gonna be too far from the water. And when you speak to the alligator children for more than a minute or two, they will tell you, don't go looking for trouble. Not unless trouble comes looking for you. 137. Now into each life there must be trouble. And into each life there's gotta be rain. Otherwise don't nothing grow. But you know that God don't give no burden that you can't carry. And it is only through adversity that you will ever know your true strength. So when the hard times come, I want you to hold on. 'Cause you fight the battles that nobody else can win. Hold on. You must be strong. 'Cause you fight the battles that nobody else can win. Nobody else can win. Every goodbye, it ain't gone. 'Cause you're sick, it don't mean you're dead. And trouble, it don't last always. Trouble, it don't last always. Trouble, it don't last Always trouble, it don't matter. Always.
And that's our selection from Arthur Flowers, who couldn't join us in person today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. That was a great musical selection, definitely fitting for the current readings, which were all based in Afro-Surrealism. And so, yeah, that was an excellent choice of music. So thank you for that. So yeah, welcome back. We're gonna get the readings rolling. So first up for this second half of the readings, we have LaMar Mitchell. LaMar Mitchell, born December 16th, 1978, the love child of Barbara Mitchell and James Mitchell, an ideal brainchild of some Martian civilization's mad scientist. He grew up in Oakland, California. I love that. Uh, a self-described movie buff, poet, writer, novelist, and screenwriter. LaMar can be found either crawling up the walls of a privatized rubber room or hunting for tardigrades in a petri dish. He identifies as queer bisexual and aspires to meet both James Baldwin and Quentin Tarantino in some French cafe outside the realm of space and time. Part of his story is being incarcerated with the Psychic Bruises to show for it. So there, LaMar is going to be reading for us today. I will turn it over to you, sir, and let you take it off.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, you're coming
Okay,
through
thank
good.
you. Yeah, so I'm LaMar. Really glad to be here. This is my first time reading a prose piece, first time ever, besides a few open mic poetry shares. This piece I'm about to read is an unfinished short story called Wormwood X and the 1000 Fugues. Trigger warning, sexual innuendo and some violence. It's a sci-fi horror story. Yeah, so I'll just get on it. I'll just move on. So it's called Worm Skull X in the 1000 Fugues by LaMar Mitchell. Slurp it, sugar, came the message. Slurp it good. Ryan Olmec was prone to seeing strange telegraphs on the surfaces of his kabuki demon opera reality. Everywhere he looked, he saw signs and symbols, weird annotations and broadcasts, little phrasings and sayings scripted onto the three-dimensional surface of his world. It was as though an angelic demon was in his brain, vandalizing everything he saw in his field of vision. Ryan had once theorized these messages were some subsidized, privately funded advertising agency, using his mind to transmit commercials and verbal neural quibbles. His visionscape was literally tattooed and graffitied with ominous memos containing ideas Ryan had never thought of or entertained, and which would never have been in his field of awareness without the influence of this inner mind ad agency / graffiti crew. He disregarded most of the intrusive messages, but this slurp it sugar foreign neurotext was the most aggressive telegraph he'd gotten, and it transfixed him infinitely. The distinct sexual aggression was also fascinating. Was this some sort of Pornhub pop-up ad? Some bizarre come on, some secret admirer who had his telekinetic number and knew the access codes to his brainwaves? Albeit said, the aggression was also terrifying in a myriad of ways. He was drinking water out of a public fountain, stashed in the back of the school campus grounds behind the Down syndrome kids' portable classrooms. He turned the knob, water spewed, he took some deep sucking inhales, lapped up cold, pleasingly icy water, and the message came, slurp it, sugar. It was written on the stainless steel surfaces of the water fountain right in the middle of a sink drain. It vaporized as he raised his head and finished sucking. Who was watching him? Was he in fact being watched? The question should have popped in long ago, only now manifesting. He decided he had to watch his back. From an Eddie Bauer store in deep South San Francisco, he purchased a switchblade, carried it on his person wherever he went, even had it handy in the shower while he washed. He felt like his uncle, who had done some time in prison, Folsom State to be exact, and how his uncle would regale stories of packing a shank in one's nether regions during visits to the prison shower room. This was exactly how he felt, imprisoned in his own fucking head, afraid of phantoms and Caspers springing out of some metaphysical man-hunting video game and killing him. Ryan Olmec had been homeless once, scrounging and living off the fumes of the city, the frothing geothermal slaughterhouse of the fetid urban areas he had to survive off of, the Black Forest to his walkabout shaman. He had learned how to hustle, how to acquire things, or as the misbegotten cliche goes, how to make $1 out of 15 cents. Daily life was all about survival, and he was not above stealing, conning, or thieving from some other human being in the interest of feeding his own predatory mandibles. Ryan knew struggle. Now he was living in a low-income AA recovery house in the scruffy outskirts between a crime-infested urban area and a rather atypically rugged suburb, trying to relaunch and reboot the old sunken 70s sitcom that was his life, turn it into widescreen celluloid material. He had a job working at the local Vegan's Paradise, where the city's hippie and granola-crunching mom and dad contingents would plop in and buy chocolate soap and macrobiotic microwavable kale combo fun noodle bowls. The type of place one would think old and grizzled Grateful Deadheads would frequent, and white liberals who loved them some semblance of a utopian lifestyle, where pavement fans and guys that listened to the Flaming Lips would buy dog food for the Pekingese Shih Tzu hybrid puppies and bump into old college friends in the pasta aisle and reminisce about the years of Barack Obama and that one Burning Man concert they went to where Ethan got totally trashed on mushrooms and peyote and LSD. Ryan had to rub elbows with these blindly arrogant types daily, and it annoyed him to eternal cock-farting flames. He wished he worked at a zoo so he could avoid people, period. Working this 9 to 5 without a girlfriend or boyfriend currently, Ryan was bisexual, living in a house with 12 other drug addicts and people in recovery, one could occasionally try and squeeze a meaningful life through the needle atop the mountaintop. That ever elusive, blissful state that Nirvanic Buddhist monks chanted about was nowhere remotely near him or where he wanted to be. He found happiness, interim default happiness, in collecting quirky things. Seashells, Robert Crumb drawings, 90s hip-hop album covers, vinyl pieces from Muddy Waters or Kraftwerk, Gary Larson cartoons, Timothy Leary quotes, shoegazer band concert flyers, National Geographic photos of cryptozoological animals, Abby Hoffman sayings, Pulp Fiction posters, specifically the Japanese theatrical version, and on and on and on and on ad infinitum. His personal room area was a splatterpunk slapdash assortment of all things strange, which, honest to goddess, put him at odds with several members of the house. Dipshits, just plain dipshits, who detested the psychedelic ostentatiousness of Ryan's eccentric personality. There was one guy, a Caucasian dude, an ex-sex offender, who found God, who particularly resented Ryan's weirdo flair. They bumped heads quite often, and Ryan grew to absolutely, abjectly hate the man for reasons beyond his past crimes. Tex Goswing, the sex offender, had, Ryan felt, a monochromatic personality, a one-dimensionality that was casually at odds with Ryan's utter colorfulness. All Tex listened to was one song on repeat, Jefferson Starship's We Built This City. That's it, just one song, over and over again. He had no imagination and not much going for him cerebrally. Ryan found Tex to be primitive and offensively one-track minded. Tex listened to his one Jefferson Starship song and tended his one little azalea plant in a white bucket atop the windowsill adjacent to his bed quarters. Creativity and mindfulness just completely dismissed him from the curriculum. He found Tex so annoying that ultimately he blotted him out of his mind so that notionally, he no longer existed. But every once in a while, they butt heads again for the upteenth time, usually over Ryan's diverse song selection. Tex hated rap and hip-hop, and Ryan loved rap and hip-hop. Clashing was almost appropriate. Then there was Deborah. How a known and previously convicted male sex offender was allowed to live in the same living quarters as a woman, an ex-addict and user, mind you, who also had her share of ticks on the criminal rap sheet, is a mystery an ancient comedic scientist would never dare crack. Deborah and Tex generally avoided each other, but when Tex was not in the room, Deborah would make mad gossip about Tex and talk major shit behind his back and say pretty awful and demeaning things about him. But I mean, you gotta cut Deborah some slack. This guy was a rapist. How could one ever write home good things about a man who did horrible shit to women like he did? You wouldn't send Hitler a Valentine, would you? Deborah was a 43-year-old Caucasian woman who had seen it and done it all. And if there was more to do, she had probably done that too or had it on her bucket list. She used to live in the hills with a rich, upwardly mobile family, but fell into the junkie circuit, getting hooked on narcotic hard drugs, then eventually selling it, then eventually getting busted for it, and landing a stint in Chowchella's women's prison. There was even a rumor that she had killed someone, her boyfriend, but there was no way to prove it. The girl had an alibi. She was now tied to this African-American dude, also a former drug dealer, who was part of the South Bay Griffins, a black bikers club. Another reason why Tex would never be caught dead messing around with Deborah. Tex knew about Deb's black boyfriend, and everyone knew he was paralytically afraid of this boyfriend, so Tex knew his place and knew not to mess with him. There was a small and minor incident a year ago when Tex had unknowingly hit on Deborah, just cozying up to the woman. Deborah knew of Tex's shady history and got creeped out by the pseudo advances and brought in Marquise, her boyfriend. Marquise straightened Tex out like slacks on an ironing board, read him the riot act the way only a 54-year-old African-American man who's been through prison and the perils of America can. There were threats and raised voices, but the message was clear. If Tex messed with Marquise's Deborah, Tex would be minus the testicle and toughing his racked body through physical therapy for the rest of his ugly, wretched sex offending life. That's the thing with sex offenders. They usually know their place. They aren't considered gangsters and they're easy to scare to put a fright in it. The important thing is Tex knows he has no juice and acts accordingly. And he definitely couldn't be expected to defend himself in a fight, especially against Marquise. Ryan hadn't had a committed relationship in 5 years, but that didn't mean he hadn't had sex in 5 years. He had a brief fling with a white girl named Kylie, who lived in the same boarding house for a 3-month court-ordered commitment. Kylie taught Ryan how to roll bud, the dowry, and their unrequited unofficial union. Ryan, in turn, turned Kylie onto comic books, mostly graphic novels not produced by the two titans of the comic book industry, Marvel and DC. The last Ryan ever heard of Kylie was she boated off to Texas with some rich white guy and knew nothing more of her. She had vanished without a trace, not even a Facebook post or a text message. Ryan and Kylie messed around a couple times against house rules, but the relationship wasn't a deep or intimate one. It was strictly a product of sexual need and availability of surrounding resources. He had been known to patrol the outskirts of the neighborhood, picking up transgender prostitutes. In previous years, he'd be copping dope and cavorting with these sex-working women, but these days the sex was satiation enough. Slurp it, sugar, the message came again as he was strolling down Walnut Street, but this time there was audio, like someone reading the message to him from inside his brain, a voice. Primally, he looked around. Who the hell is calling to him like this? It was as though a hornet had buzzed into his ear and bit his eardrum, looking for attention. He swiveled his neck to and fro, like a pendulum or the Bigfoot monster from the Patterson video. It was starting to get annoying, this repeated message. It was making him increasingly more and more paranoid, and he found himself watching his back more vigilantly, looking over his shoulder more often, suspicious of every humanoid being he passed. He'd walk through downtown a nervous wreck, drawing the scrutiny of the local drug dealers who detected in his nervousness the potentiality of a snitch. Addiction is a monstrous penis. Every addict knows this. It's the cunning, baffling, powerful internal gravity that, self-guided, impels one to use again. And all this nervous, negative energy was itching at Ryan, making him want to get a drink, get a smoke, or score some hop, or snort a line. Yeah, maybe that'll do. He'd bag an 8-ball and freebase it. Maybe he'll sell his ring for it. Maybe he'd go boosting again, stealing shit from out of the mini mall downtown. Why did someone want him to slurp it? Who was antagonizing him? He ducked into a Chinese dollar store, suddenly fearful someone was following him. He lollygagged for 20 minutes, watching every patron that entered the store, every pedestrian that passed by. Damn, he needed that eighth badly. Ryan purchased a butter knife for no apparent reason. He ambled down Patrica's Boulevard, sweating bricks. This is almost over, sorry. Sweating bricks, his eyeballs spooked with drug lust. Back at the boarding house, he snuck into one of the 5 bathrooms on the facility. No one saw him enter. He was ghost-like. He stared dead-eyed at the stranger in the mirror, looking back at him with curiosity, like a chimpanzee in a cage with a human on the opposite end. He fingered the butter knife. He scraped the edges of his ear with it, caressing the outer lobe, probing his right ear flirtatiously. Then with complete and utter psychotic clarity, he jammed the knife into his eardrum. In his mind, he heard a pop, like a joint blown out of whack, like a bone had broke, blood spurt in a fountain like spray, sploosh. For 15 straight minutes, he jiggered with the butter knife in his ear, curling into his cortex, his eyes sometimes bulging out of its sockets. Blood was painting the bathroom magenta red. Twirling the knife in his inner ear, then finally a foreign object, tiny, spat out of his auricular cavity. Ryan smiled, satisfied, like, gee, that was a fucking workout. It was a little microchip about the size of a SanDisk flash drive and had popped out of his head, now spinning on the linoleum floor like a coin. A metal electronic tooth for the brain chip fairy. He nailed and pinched the chip between his thumb and index finger, inspecting it with the zeal and curiosity of a biologist investigating the diaphanous body of an arrow poison frog, a foreign specimen. Holding it up to the light, it had an industrial-grade Brandon logo stenciling etched onto its diminutive surface. The Afro Apex Company, Anubis Coeptus Industries. Thank you. That's done.
That was great, LaMar. Thanks. It's definitely some visceral imagery there. So I'm gonna ask you some questions about it later. But
All right.
just rolling forward here, we're gonna move on to Tara. So Tara Christina is a mother, author, and tea maker. She's a contributing writer for the Good Men Project, author of several articles on Medium.com, and is working on her first novel. Tara loves good food, great tea, herbal medicine, nature, and being a mom. You can read more at onetarachristina.com. And with that said, I will let you take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brent. I'm excited to be here. What I will be reading from is an excerpt from a novel I've been writing for the last several years. It's in 3 sections. The first is the prequel, which is the ancestral storyline. The second section is the family, the modern day family. And the third section goes in between the modern day world and ancestral times. And this is from the third section, The Return. The family arrived at the Oliveria farm where they would stay until their nuptials. Eric's mother, Mrs. Fernandez, walked around the circular driveway with a wide smile as she remembered her childhood visit to the family farm in Brazil. Mr. Hernandez held his wife's hand. Eric went to the door, and before he could put in the key, a Portuguese man answered and looked at him curiously. Eric understood the deep, suspicious glare was a sign that this was a cousin who swore to protect the home and the land. Eric looked at him and with power declared, "I'm Eric Roberto Oliveria Hernandez." The cousin smiled widely. "Primo, welcome." And the 2 men embraced. 3 more cousins came outside to take in the family's bags. They all bowed to Mrs. Hernandez, daughter of Avo, direct descendant of Misty Oliveria, and the rightful heir to the Oliveria home and land. After the appropriate greetings, Tricia, Eric, and Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez walked the land. Much of the land was still intact, but there was still a part where tree stumps remained. The family story told of the enslaved ancestors' great escape to freedom and the subsequent response. The Boudreaux family burned down much of the trees of no return and cut down much of the forest in search of witches. The Oliveria home rested untouched at the base of the half-burned 300-acre forest that was taking its precious time to regenerate. Mrs. Hernandez teared up as she emotionally experienced her mother's loss. They entered into the base of what was once a lush forest, where only a few family drawings still remain capturing its expansive beauty. Tricia walked closely to her mother-in-law. They arrived at a spot just beyond several tree stumps when Tricia dropped to the ground as if a force beyond human strength pulled her to her knees. Tricia began sobbing uncontrollably. Eric tried to pull up Tricia by the arm, but she bent over with her head on the ground, hand in the dirt, and sobbed. Mrs. Hernandez began to cry, which upset Mr. Hernandez. He held his wife, asking what was wrong, while Eric begged Tricia to stand and come back to the house. Tricia sat up as if she were strongly instructed, and she walked 3 feet north, got on her hands and knees again, and began digging in the dirt. She furiously dug while breathing deeply. Eric feared for his wife's mental state and tried to pick her up when his mother yelled, "No, let her dig, my love, let her dig." Mrs. Hernandez approached her daughter-in-law, closed her eyes, and held out her hands as if praying over Tricia. Mrs. Hernandez began to sway from side to side with a smile on her face. She began to sing in Portuguese, her favorite childhood lullaby. Eric and Mr. Hernandez both respected women's wisdom. They knew women had a connection with the divine that they could not understand but trusted. Mrs. Hernandez looked at her husband and commanded, call more men to dig where she cannot." He and Eric looked at one another, neither wanting to leave their women. Mr. Hernandez began to yell, "We need more men. We need to dig. Bring your tools, your machines." About 10 men ran with shovels and pickaxes, while another came with an excavator. Mrs. Hernandez said, "Dig," as she stood protectively over her daughter-in-law. "Don't touch him," the woman digging furiously in the dirt. Tricia took a deep breath up, stared forward. Eric shouted wordly. "I'm taking ice," that Eric felt with the look of a mad woman on the edge of her sanity. Mrs. Hernandez said in a deep, throaty voice even she did not recognize, "Trust the ancestors, son, trust." Tricia stood and walked towards a curiously interesting tree stump with new growth, small branches, and leaves growing from its side. Mrs. Hernandez instructed her son, "Bring her water." He looked at his mother with a firm sense of disobeying her for the sake of not leaving his wife's side. His mother said lovingly, "I will not leave her." Eric asked one of the men to run and fill several bottles of water from the well. He obeyed. The man handed Eric water, and Eric went towards his wife, Mrs. Hernandez. Mrs. Hernandez said, "No, I will give." She took the water to Tricia. Mrs. Hernandez knelt down while Eric and his father looked on in shock. She held the bottle to her daughter-in-law's mouth and said, "Daughter, please drink." Tricia obeyed and gulped the water as if it were her first drink in the trees. The roots, still clearly deep within the ground, yet the substantial growth above ground intertwined as if to form a perfectly shaped reclining chair. Tricia felt the earth's invitation to rest as her body felt tired. She turned around, sat down, crossed her legs, laid back, and allowed the roots to cradle from her body in order to recycle it back more powerfully, and then closed her eyes. Eric looked at his wife with both fear and wonder. He was familiar with the years of meditation experience that allowed for her to sit, yet this time he felt something different. This experience was taking his wife somewhere else. Eric looked at Tricia, who was physically present, but as if she disappeared. 1869. And she goes back in time.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that excerpt. Definitely a good little chunk to get the interest going for the novel. So thank you for sharing. So next up we have Kelechi Ubozoh. Did I say it right? Because I practiced it in my head.
Yes, you did say it right.
Yes. Okay. I know how important names are for us, so I want to make sure I get it right. So glad I did. She is a Nigerian American writer and mental health advocate featured in the S Word documentary, CBS This Morning with Gayle King, and the Oprah magazine. Woo, these accomplishments. Her first book, We've Been Too Patient, Voices from Radical Mental Health, right here on the screen for you, was released from North Atlantic Books and Penguin Random House last summer. So definitely already want to check this out. But I will turn it over to you for the reading.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And We've Been Too Patient is a collaborative effort with LD Green. So I will just go ahead and start. And again, thank you all of the previous panelists and writers and AfroSurreal and you, Brent, for hosting us. Been doing a wonderful job. These are recent poems, and you might feel that. Unbroken. In my waking dreams, the woods call me. Remember, sleepy-eyed and slumberless, I stumble upon branches and roots. They have secrets to share. This is not our home. Stargazer, We've been waiting to wake you up. Our home is of lilac clouds, diamond lights, and black moons. We honor the night beauty. Tears fall like jewels that light your path, castles made of ebony sand, everything fragile and secure. We tucked away on this tiny, sad blue planet for your protection, where you belong to everyone and no one, planted you in the bellies of other mothers who could not keep you. Oracles warned of pain endured, lost city of life, yet you remain unbroken. Despite the mirror's deceit, rise, embrace your soul shine. Come home to magic without lies, take the ladder to the stars, shed years of shields. Ancestors have returned. We are a universe, larger than feeble chains created for your body and soul, stronger than the system built upon our bones, smarter than the trickery used to detach your power, our present a gift. They couldn't clone you, trap you, be you, so they had to kill you. It's time to go. They receive no more of your gifts. We love you, we see you, wake up. Water. Big toe, full plunge, submerge, complex underwater constellations, sky sister and water brother, cleanse, drown, purify, demolition, broken family, yielded against your gifts, weapon and goddess, water pockets flow from this iris, gentle hysteria, sad blue planet, toxic ruins, impure, water, water, she weeps. Travel. Travel so far, I am lost. Gray skyscrapers, sticky cities, bruised egos, familiar diners, old friends, torn fishnet, late subway carts, yellow sea cabbies, midnight pizza, lights too bright, lights too dim, too much noise, pressure, competition, expectation. Friends are home, not this place. Southern red clay roads, cruel egos, soft suburbs, noisy neighbors, decadent racism, and red velvet cake. Too small, rivers of pain, uncomfortable steel-toe boots, disinterested audiences, silent best friend. Too lonely. Mother is home, not this place. Westbound gold chasing, wise old trees, cold ocean, glittering lights, massive red bridges, creamy avocados, breathtaking. Smoky pastures, dewy hills, sunrise, soft lies and gentle truth, no hope of perfection, but traveled so far. I am home. Witch. This magic is old. Ancestor magic. It's in your blood. No escape. Birthright. Juju in Nigeria, our family doctor, quite different from your friendly white coat. There is power in your history and your lineage, luck warped around your born day, and so much more. Unfriendly spirits follow you, law of attraction magnified to unearthly creatures. Your gut is law, and every time you ignore it, tragedy. Perfect premonitions masking his dreams, that deja vu cloudy feeling haunts your every move. Vision from heart, not sight. Space unfolds, electricity and vibration, good and evil guides you if you listen. But if you don't, the witch within burns you first. The last piece I want to do is from an anthology called Endangered Species, Enduring Values. This is a large piece that a lot of folks are here, and it's from San Francisco Writers Areas of Color, and Shizue Siegel did this piece. So this is where I'll leave you all. This is the Black girl origin story. The Black woman is God, but they have forgotten. Their strength was forged from the fire of the sun. Black girl, you were a moon goddess before they told you those lies. You are creation. They came spilling from your thighs. Your wet caves adorned with diamonds, ebony sunset. They have forgotten. Black girl, maybe someone told you, but could you hear it? Was it a whisper or did it come from your mama? Did you believe it? That you're made of fallen stars plucked from the night that light your eyes, that black girl magic is real? Are you starting to remember to unlearn those lies? They want to be you so badly. Did you ever wonder why? From your lips to your hips, fluid motion, your swag to your sway, ebony sunset. That strength is but a cover to eclipse the soft, gentle warmth inside. Oh, the black girl forgot her origin story. Magical ethos, ebony sunset, galaxies, light in her eyes, sways in her hips, free spirit. That's how she was made. The secret of her softness is hidden in her strength. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. I am lost for words. That was so good. Woo. Do you mind just holding up the books again? So this is for me at this point. I just want to see the books because yep, I'm spending y'all got me spending all kind of money today, but it's okay. I don't mind because this is amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So next up we have Alan Clark. Um, Alan Clark is your friendly neighborhood supervillain and ontological mechanic and author of Rise of the Black Panthers, which you can see on the screen right there, the sci-fi soap opera Babylon, and founder of Phantom Electric Comic with solo exhibitions at Crow's Work Gallery, the I Drum, and New Street Gallery. Clark studied thermodynamics and theoretical physics at Georgia State University. Okay, Georgia. Find his comics at phantomelectric.com. All right, without further ado, I'll let you take it away, Alan.
Hello, everybody. My story I'm going to tell you today is my name is Karen. Don't call me Karen. Clint Marshall was the only manager working at the Walmart on 53rd and Phoenix, located where meth baggies come in either little Confederate symbols or swastikas. The previous day, half of the staff walked out on him because Walmart is a shitty place to work for. So Clint, along with a skeleton crew at 1043 at a 24-hour Walmart, walked the aisles avoiding the nauseating fluorescent lighting, which has been tested for optimal buying potential. This was prime Karen hour. He would maneuver the floor grounds as if he was maneuvering a minefield during heavy fire. This went on for most of the night, but sooner or later, they'll find him. When two or more Karens are present at any time, they are called a caucus of Karens, and their native call is, "Can I speak to your manager?" Many times he would descend into fits of madness when he would be awakened in the middle of the day with only a few hours sleep from the ghostly echo of, "Can I speak to your manager?" He was in the crosshairs of the aisles between bathrooms and children's section when not one, not two, but three Karens tagged him as he was trying to go undetected. They all in unison said in harmony like a chant to open the bowels of the lower basements of hell, "Can I speak to your manager?" Clint was the proverbial deer being reared and backed up by a Hummer. Clint was frozen with terror. With each blink of the eye, two more Karens would appear. Then 4, 18, 36, 118, till the point there wasn't an inch of space in the entire Walmart that wasn't occupied with a person, all with the same characteristics of the Karen. Then the Karen began to merge. Flesh merged with flesh. The many that filled every inch of space now began to become one. The blob of meat grew, consuming everything in its path. The roll of flesh crushed aisles after aisles of plastic, slave-made toxic garbage, made for future waste dumps for future poor people to meddle through. As the Karen grew in size, first destroying the ceiling of the Walmart, then to the height where you can see it from the trailer park where you could get some pretty inexpensive meth, then the entire town of Phoenix, Alabama, could see it if it weren't in the middle of something like doing the aforementioned meth while watching The Expendables 1 and 2 on TNT. And then to the sides where it began to become a problem for air traffic control. And finally it peaked when the amalgamation of not only Karens, Beckys, and Patties all merged to one meaty, sweaty, fleshy, entitled monstrosity, which now can be viewed from space. No person of color was safe. While this horror was going prime time and pretty much ruining all future plans for any person of color in the proximity of the raging Karen, a local golf course located only a mile from ground zero, where it is said a Negro ghost is cursed to roam the land, helping older and mainly white golfers improve their swing. He was cursed there to those lands when he threatened to snitch on Harriet Tubman. Miss Tubman had to pistol whip him to death because she used up all her bullets recently when she had to shoot some slave catcher dead. As the ancestor says, snitches get stitches. For years, he suffered helping one white golfer improve on the drive, their swing, how to avoid the sand dunes, and much more stuff the narrator didn't care to do the research to complete the list of things this poor ghost was forced to do. He hated it and wished for anything to end the curse the ancestors of the land placed on him. He sensed his time has come. He knew it within his magical Negro self that he can defeat the Karen superior. It didn't matter if it would utterly destroy him. If it meant freedom from the torment given, washed up all torment given would wash up all the old white people. It would clear up all that shit with the giving white people golfing advice. He felt himself glow. He felt himself grow. He felt himself fill the sky. And finally, he found himself staring at the million on million of eyes bubbling from the meat of the Karen superior. As its body split between the amalgamated Karen's hands stretching, clawing, stop signs, cars, planes, trains, pierced through its pale flesh, all absorbed into its fleshy prison. Her thunderous, screeching voice shattered the skies as she utters, "My name is Karen, don't call me Karen." People looked in astonishment as the two titans took up the entire horizon. The Negro spirit, who for so many long years had forgotten his own name, but knew the real name of the Karen, the first Karen. He remembered the day before he chose to escape. Someone like this said the words that brought the murderous madness in his eyes. He remembered what the vile creature said to him the day before he fled for freedom. "I want to speak to your master, boy. Go fetch him." And with a glare that would tear worlds asunder, he raised the mythical golf club that he had with him since the day of the curse began and called her by its real name. "Go fuck yourself, Miss Anne." And with one strike, it ended as quickly as it begun, as the sounds of trumpets erupted and the earth split open, which brought down the beast. We, the people, bathed in heavenly light as the ghost ascended into the heavens, forgiven for his past transgressions. And the world was free of Karen once and for all. Bye, Karen. Thank you.
That was great. I mean, you can look at the chat. Everybody's laughing right now. So that was
Oh,
awesome, man. Comedy is so hard to write, and you pulled it off. So kudos to you, man. That was great. I absolutely loved it. You mind holding
awesome.
up the book again one more time for everybody?
This
So
is a
Rise of
comic
the
book
Black
about the Black Panther Party. It has no comedy in it. It's historical, and it's a graphic novel about starts off with the transatlantic slave trade and talks about the rebellions that we've endured and became victorious and some lost, Civil War and civil rights, and Malcolm X, Huey, Bobby Seals, the forming of the Panthers,
Okay.
stuff like that.
Covering it all. All right. That's awesome. All right. So, yeah, definitely check that out. And thank you again, Alan, for the hilarious reading. That was great. All right. So, next up, we have Dera Williams. So, Dera Williams is a fiction and memoir writer whose writing is informed by ancestral ties and family history research. This is reflected in her Oakland childhood stories and her Great Migration novel In Progress, as she heeds the voices of her ancestors in her mystical exploration of African and African American folklore. Thank you for being with us today, Dara. I will let you take off with the reading.
Thank you, Brent. This has been great. And Alan, you are crazy. But today I'm going to share a piece from not maybe a novel, a story in progress, Amina, Moonwater Goddess. And I am going to share a picture that was coincidentally drawn by my colleague, Alan, who just spoke, how I imagine Moonwater Goddesses. Oh, hold on.
No rush. We all here. So
Okay, for some reason it's not.
Here, I can share it on my screen.
Okay, all right. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Amina, Dawn of the Moonwater Goddess. Georgia, 1859. Amina had been on the run for almost a full week. 2 days on the road from Old Man Spivey's plantation in eastern Alabama until she found shelter at her first safe house on what they called the Underground Railroad. She stayed there 24 hours and then she was given food and directions to go to the next stop with 2 other runaways. There she stayed 3 days before it was safe to be transported further. The other runaways went in another wagon in a different direction than she was transported. Because she could read, was given a crude hand-drawn map, and if she followed directions and stayed off the main roads, she should make it to the next safe house in Georgia by dawn. She knew she was on Georgia soil and near the swamp indicated on the map. It was dusk and a full moon was emerging. It began to rain. At first, a few drops, and then it came harder, faster, unrelenting. She needed to stop and let the storm pass. Her thin clothing was no protection from the forces of the cold wind. She walked towards the huge cypress and tupelo trees, seeking temporary shelter. Amina kept her attention on the moon that was to the right of her. The full moon emerged fuller with each step she took. She knew she had to stay alert and stay focused, but was losing time because of the storm. The thunder roared, tumbling through the swamps as if going to war. Then the temperature suddenly changed. The air was clammy, mist seeping upward. It was warm and the rain stopped. As Amina nestled in the tall leaves near the water, she noticed how still it was. So still the dewdrops tinged against the water and pulled in small circles. Then there were dim beats of a drum. She sat up and cocked her ear. Was she imagining things? The beats were getting louder, and she was transported back to her village in Funo, West Africa. She was 12 years old again. She was sitting with other girls as they awaited the dancers who would come and dance to the beats. Amina was brought back to the present by the sudden movement on the swamp in front of her. There was a swirling, kind of like a whirlpool, and the drum beats were slowing down. Her attention was caught by the rush of water as a slow emergence from the swamp came forth. Was it a sea animal? But a brightness glowed over the cypress as the darkness began to disappear. Something was coming up. Amina saw white, all white, but as she looked closer, there was dark skin next to the whiteness. Women, beautiful queen-like women in shades of dark tones, 8 of them slowly rising up, up. Their regal heads adorned with an elaborate braided hair and floral crowns, dressed in white shimmering gowns with long sleeves that billowed as they slowly rose from the water. Their dark round bodies swaying from side to side, moving rhythmically and precisely to the beat of the drums. Staccato sounds of beats and flows like the drums in Funo. The drums that warned of war or danger, the drums that celebrated a new life and a good harvest. The goddesses were in sync with each other and the movement of the leaves of the stalks of tall grass as they swayed in unison in a mesmerizing ritual. Time passed slowly, and Amina knew that this was not a dream. It was as real as Bibi had told her. The night became still, and the beating of the drums tempered as the Moonwater goddesses swaying became slower and slower as they moved in rhythm with the drums. They were spread about a foot apart, but as they slowed down, they drew closer together, forming a half circle, looking up to the moon, and now in full circle, bowed their heads, and just as they emerged, they slowly submerged, slowly, slowly, and just at the last beat of the drum, they were gone. The night still, quiet, haunting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. That was really lyrical and just gorgeous writing. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that with
Thank
us.
you.
So last but not least, and we're doing good on time too, so I'm gonna have enough time to really ask y'all some questions. So just get ready for that too. But last but not least, we have Thaddeus. And before I read his bio, I'm gonna let this motorcycle finally take off behind me. All right, there we go. All right, so Thaddeus Howze is a prolific writer of speculative fiction and fantasy, as well as scientific, technical, and cultural commentary from his office in Hayward, California. Thaddeus has published 2 books, Hayward's Reach, a collection of short stories, and Broken Glass, an urban fantasy starring his favorite adventurer, Clifford Ingram. All right, Thaddeus, you are our last reader, so no pressure, but I will let you take it over from here.
No pressure. I got you. This is a short story written some time ago. I have had many pets, and occasionally when the mood strikes me, I include a pet in a story. Today was one of those days. The story is called Where the Sun Touches the Earth, a tale of cats versus evil. A haughty woman festooned in heavy brass jewelry, the tacky kind, loud, clanging, and discordant, stands looking at a rhyming dragon who's gazing into a mystic pool with her. The dragon is an extraordinary member of his species. His scales are dull, coated in coal dust. His musculature, once mighty, has the look of an athlete past his prime, a bit pudgy in the middle and soft overall. His wings, still mighty from lifting his massive bulk, droop whenever he's on the ground too long, and the flesh between the skeletal frame flaps loosely like poorly hung drapes. His countenance is one of supreme unhappiness, his fanged head hanging low, nearly dipping into the viewing pool. It wouldn't take much imagination to see him drowning himself. Their hellish surrounds sizzle with fiery tendrils that rise up from the molten earth, a part of the Stygian underworld, rife with the screams of the damned, their cries an unending concerto adding to the misery flowing through the air, surely an unpleasant place at best. The woman's mouth is tight as she whispered something through clenched teeth, her displeasure evidenced as she points her finger directly into the dragon's smoking visage. He winces and responds, "Where the sun touches the earth? That was such a vague clue. How was I supposed to know that the answer to the riddle was in the Arctic Circle and it meant the Aurora Borealis?" Her answer sizzles like a hand on a griddle, a hand held there against its will. You're supposed to be a rhyming dragon, one of the riddle masters of Stygia, supposedly one of the finest minds of demon kind. Answers are supposed to be your stock in trade. Oh, well, we don't get National Geographic in hell, and no Auroras either. Until last month, we didn't even get the internet. Until I checked Wikipedia, I didn't even know what an aurora was. He turned his head away, looking at an imaginary bit of lint on his tail. No matter, the conjunction of worlds is already taking place. Can you take me to where the goddess will arrive? Yes, I can, but we may already be too late. Hope for your sake we're not. She climbs onto the neck of the dragon. He wheels away into the Stygian sky. The woman in brass gestures and a portal begins to form in the distance. The demon climbs before diving into the portal and into the harrowing, the voidway between the worlds. Semi jumps up onto the desk of the man and surveys his work. With his tail waving back and forth, his posture spoke eloquently of impatience and growing anxiety. The digital representation of the goddess on the widescreen monitor is sublime perfection. Semi presses his cheek against the screen, basking in the bliss that is Bastet. Meanwhile, his brothers are outside standing watch, just in case the evil is able to detect what they're doing before they were ready. Fat Boy positively glows with power, and Big Red looks as menacing as Semi's ever seen him. The two of them are outside watching the waves, hoping to see anyone approaching. But the most dangerous task of freeing the goddess would still fall to him. Man, will this work? We don't have much time. The man was a genius with computers, but revealing to him the secrets of magic may have been too much. The battle against the forces of evil was supposed to remain part of the secret lives of cats. You know I have a name, right? The man looks at the cat he believed was his pet, only to discover their roles were reversed, and it was he who was being guarded and protected from an unknown threat his cat did not deem important enough for him to know about. Yes, you have a name, and we are forbidden to use it. Names have power. We never use yours to prevent evil from gaining control over you. Have you finished the task at hand? Semi, this digital representation is an exact reproduction of the piece of wall at the museum. I've used over 50 high-resolution images. If your magic is as good as you say, this image will be perfect. Walking across the keyboard as he'd done so many times in the past, Semi stood and nuzzled the man under the chin. You know I can't let you remember any of this. She would never forgive me if she knew you were aware of our secret. If you erase my memory, how will I know if it works? Well, if you look up at tomorrow morning and the chariot of the sun god does not appear, you know something was horribly wrong. No pressure. Nope, not a bit. You may pet me now. You'll forget this when I'm gone. Life will return to what it was. My brothers will keep you safe while I'm gone. So you guys are doing this all the time, saving the world, preventing evil? Yes, of course. We've done this for your entire existence, for our entire relationship with man. Without cats, humanity wouldn't even exist. You'd have starved to death, overcome by rats or ignorance or some other dreaded catastrophe. You may thank me with an extra treat from the special stash on top of the refrigerator when I return. Have I ever helped you before? No, but if this works, I may call upon you again, but it still will remain our secret. Good luck, Semi. Semi jumped into the lap of his man and waves his tail, creating the sigil of Horus in the air. Thank you, man. And with a bounding leap, he jumps toward the monitor and passes through the glass with only the tiniest of ripples. The man smiles, shakes his head, and falls asleep. The cat lands on the tundra grass and flexes his toes in the tough permafrost. Nasty place. Glad I don't live here. He looks up and sees the moon's already deeply in eclipse. With his legs flashing in the fading moonlight, he runs into the night. The aurora forms in the distance, first tiny wisps growing stronger with each passing minute. Hurry, my champion, the time draws near. I need you to anchor my passage. I am coming, my goddess, as fast as my frozen body will allow. Was there no other point you could have come through? Someplace with a tropical climate? You do remember we're descended from desert creatures? Yes, my child, I do. Please forgive my imposition. If we escape, I promise we'll go someplace warm. Beware, two Stygians approached. I sense them, but they will not stop me from arriving in time. The night lit up as an explosion of fiery venom shook the ground near the running cat. The dragon swooped out of the sky, his passenger clinging tight to his neck. You missed! Mistress, I am a rhymer, not a fighter. My venom glands just don't get much use. Then perhaps you'd make a better floor covering than a rhyming dragon. A second and more accurate burst of venom flies from the dragon's mouth. Only a split-second bound saves Semi from disintegration. The shockwave from the exploding venom sends him flying into the frozen grass, inert and still. Land there. The dragon lands and his body glows with heat. His feet sink into the permafrost as he melts the ground around him. His passenger, wearing the skin of a human woman, rises from his prostrated neck and floats lightly just above the icy ground. As she walks across the ice, the aurora grows brighter and the sky sizzles with electrical energy. She finds Semi lying on the ground with smoke rising from his tiny body. I have you, you little bastard. Your trick was good, but it wasn't good enough. I'll stop your goddess and her kin from returning. This is the ascendancy of demons. No gods need apply. She picked up his battered body and looked into his one open eye. She began to squeeze his neck, choking him. She rejoices inwardly as his life force slowly fades away. He spasms one last time and then hangs still in her hand. Curiosity overwhelms him, and she brings him close to her face, amazed that something so tiny could be so much trouble. Semi suddenly struck out, slashing the arm, face, and the eye of the woman, flipping about and landing on his feet to streak away into the tundra grass. The woman screams and clutches her face with one hand. With the other, she sends bolts of power that land wildly under the tundra. You don't know much about cats, do you? The dragon's voice was quiet. You do know they have 9 lives, right? Do they even brief you before they send you into the world anymore? That's a myth, she snarled as ichor dripped from her ruined eye. And so are we. Well, that's going to leave a nasty scar. Wounds from cats never heal. A furious scream rises up from the tundra as the moon darkened completely and the aurora lit up the sky, swirling and crackling, and off in the distance touches the earth just for a moment. Leaping into the arms of his goddess, a cat rejoices.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Thaddeus. Yeah, so before I get to the questions, our gracious and wonderful admin team, they just wanted to say a couple of words, so I will let them take it from here.
Thank you, Brent. First of all, thanks to you, Brent. We appreciate you guest moderating for FIYAH Magazine. It means so much for you all to be here with us. And I'm just noticing in the chat room here, some of the attendees. I noticed some of the FIYAH staff and some, people are on board. Thank you so much for the support. It means so much to us. Thank you to Rochelle Spencer. She is the original founder that brought us all together. We're so happy to be in community with each other. Thank you to the beautiful readers. I am just in love with all of these works, super excited. Thank you also to Rochelle. She has been typing in, manually typing in the closed captioning so that this event could be more accessible. And it is our hope going forward to continue to do that and to improve as we go forward. Thanks again to MK Chavez, who has shared her time. She's helped me moderate the chat, making sure everyone's covered. One last thing that I want to say, if you've enjoyed what you heard here today, we are, the majority of readers here today have been compiling their works into an anthology that will be forthcoming. So we just wanted to share, do a little book cover reveal. This is where we're at with our local author anthology. Notice it says volume 1, because we're not gonna stop with this. If you're not in the first one, you could be in the next one, but we'll keep you posted with progress. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you. Thank you, Brent.
No problem. Thank you. That's a great cover, so I'm gonna be looking out for that. So yeah, great job on everybody's part. Absolutely, so much talent. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm happy. Rochelle reached out to me initially to kind of involve FIYAH with this. I guess I'll just give a quick little run through of FIYAH for those who may not know about us. We are a Black speculative fiction literary magazine. We've been going for about 5 years now. I do the social media and manage the reviews. We've won the World Fantasy Award, which we were very happy to receive. We were nominated for a Hugo last year. Unfortunately, didn't win, but we're nominated again this year. So I'm pulling for us to clinch it this year. It'd be great. Obviously, we don't do what we do for awards, but it wouldn't hurt to have one. But yeah, so you can find us at on Twitter, on Facebook. Our website is firelitmag.com. After the reading's over, we will actually be posting an interview, and in that interview, it will have social media links for all of our panelists today. So be sure to check that out. Follow these people, talented people. You want to get on the ground floor. Some of them are already achieving and succeeding, and so just follow these amazing writers. Don't limit your scope of the writers you're following and the talent that you have in your social circles. So now I'll move to a more fun part, get to some questions for the people who read in our second half here. So I am going to I'm going to go in reverse order. Since Thaddeus had to go last, I'm going to let him be first in the questions. So Thaddeus, what initially drew you to writing speculative fiction?
I've been reading it all my life, actually. Since I was able to read, I've been reading speculative fiction. I started reading comics, and I went from comics to short stories, and from short stories to novels. And so I think as long as I've ever been reading, I have been consuming the fantastic. And once I got old enough to go to the library, then basically I just never went home again. I would go home with as many books as they would allow me, and I'd bring them back 2 or 3 days later, and she'd have a new pile, and that was our relationship. So I walk in, I hand her a bag, she hands me a bag, and I go home again. So I was always reading this stuff. So I knew I would eventually end up writing it one day. I just didn't know how long that would take.
So in terms of your writing career and where you're at now, and where in 5 years would you like to be as an author? What would you like to see out there? What kind of platform would you like for yourself to have?
5 years from now, I'd like to have a Hugo sitting on my desk. Barring a Hugo, I'll take a Nebula or a Locus Award. I'm not particular, just give me something. I have friends of mine who are trying to convince me to work in Hollywood as a script writer, and it's never been my ambition. You know, a lot of people want to work in Hollywood. They love it. They think it's the best thing ever. And I have just the opposite response, because I always feel like when I look at writers who've written movies that get turned into movies, it's the rare writer that's happy with the result. Most writers see it and go, well, this isn't what I wrote. And I feel like when I spend the time to write something, I really want it to look like what I wrote, not what someone interpreted to mean. And so I know once they buy it, they can do whatever they want with it. So for me, I'd like to probably have a half a dozen more books out and, you know, have people talking about my work. I already do a lot of other kind of writing. So I write as a journalist. I write for a lot of other places. So this thing that I do here as a speculative fiction writer is because I love it. Everything else I do because the world needs it. And so, you know, one of them will do something for me probably sooner than the other, but I'm confident that, you know, writing and I are going to have a nice long relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, from what I've heard, I'm confident too. So we're gonna keep at it, and yeah, I'm gonna throw the energy up there for that Hugo. We're gonna make it happen.
There you go.
All right, so I'm gonna move on to Dera. So Dera, your work was just gorgeous and evocative, and you just had like such detail in it. So like, when you're approaching your writing, do those details just come naturally, or is it something you have to catch in editing, or is just like sensory details just something that you kind of have always been drawn to?
Most of it just comes, and then I have to go back and put in more detail, but some of the things just come through, and you know, add more details later.
And
Love
so,
is natural.
Yeah, because I mean, it felt effortless when you were reading it. Like the way it just came out, I was like, wow, I was just so impressed. You just had such like strong details. I could see it, I could feel it, I could smell it. And it was actually, it was just like, I felt like I was being transported. So that was just amazing. So I know you're working on a novel right now. How far are you into it? How's it going? Like, how are you feeling about it?
I'm looking, it's getting closer to finish. I'm looking at maybe October. It's a great migration story, and about 4 women who come from the South to Oakland, a generational story. And it's loosely based on my mother and her friends, the 4 women, loosely based. And yeah, I go into all the different parts of history from the 40s up to the 2000s. They all went to historically Black colleges, and so went through civil rights period and came to Oakland. So it's a lot, but it needs to be told.
Absolutely. No, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's definitely a story we need to hear. So keep at it. I'm looking forward to it being out there in the universe. So just nothing but good vibes your way. So definitely. Thank you so much again for reading. It was a beautiful piece.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So all right. So next on the list, Alan. I got uh so with your piece, man, like comedy is such a hard thing to pull off, and I'm always impressed when people can not, I mean, land one joke, let alone have me rolling the entire time. So like, what how do you approach comedy in your writing?
You know, I've always looked at comedy as in, you ever heard the joke, guy walks into a bar? It's a joke that
Yeah,
builds itself so it becomes a larger joke. And I always looked at telling a story with that platform in mind. What's the bigger joke, and how many little jokes can I get till it grows into a bigger joke until you're pissing yourself? I'm always going for the laugh piss ratio, you know. That's very important. You're like, oh my God, I have to change my undergarments. I done it. Good job, Alan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't have to do that, but I was laughing. So you did you did very well. That story just yeah, like carried it through. Like you said, sometimes jokes, people will build them and they'll fall flat. You managed to keep it going the whole way and it stuck the landing. So kudos to you on that. So I know you said your other book didn't have any kind of comedy. So like how do you balance between the two? Like, are you always working on like one serious thing and one comedic thing, or do you do like focus on one at a time and move back and forth between them?
I have ADHD, so I like to juggle. you know, so you kind of like, I guess for me, or what they say ADHD does is that you kind of juggle. Your attention span is that. Yeah. Anyway, see, and you got to keep yourself occupied. So I like to bounce back and forth and keep it lively.
Yeah,
Rebellion
you did
and
that.
comedy is a good way to keep things interesting.
Yeah, no, and comedy is such a powerful way to get a message across. Because I mean, you had a message, even though I'm laughing. I understand clearly like what you're trying to say. So you do it so well, man. And yeah,
I
thank you
you know
too
I
for being here.
I'm just an optimistic nihilist. We're all going to go to the same place, but let's have a good laugh till we get there.
Yeah. Well, the laugh was had, man. So thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated. All
All
right,
righty then.
so I'll move on to Kelechi. All right, so oh my gosh, your stuff was so, whew. You just hit on, I mean, you hit on history. You hit on like just the rhythm of like Africanness and just it was just so much going on and just I mean, and you did it with style and flair, and I just really liked it. So like, um, when like what do you like to write about in your poetry? I don't want to assume anything, but
If I could be a nonfiction poet, that's what it would be. When I'm impacted by what's happening in the world, I have to release it somewhere. But I also want to have some magic in there because to me, magic isn't fiction, it's real. So just trying to intertwine the two is important.
yeah, you do such a good job. I mean, I could listen to you all afternoon reading. It was such a
Thank
great
you.
poetry. So I guess what I always wonder with poetry is that, you know, do you work on a lot of pieces at once, or because some of the stuff feels like emotionally heavy and I would just have to walk away from it. So are you able to get a lot of poetry done at once, or is it more like this heavy piece, step away for a bit, this heavy piece, step away for a bit?
Yeah, no, really what makes me write more is someone saying, Kelechi, we need to book you somewhere. And I'm like, uh-oh, I need to write some new stuff. It's other people. And then I'm like, what's happening? Oh, I feel a lot of feelings. So I wish I could tell you I had like this really amazing process,
Yeah.
but it's truly someone books me for a reading and I'm like, uh-oh, I have old things. I need to write something relevant. And yeah, that kind of thing.
Business is a motivator. Like
It is a
I can't
motivator.
I can't knock how the motivation comes as long as it comes, especially with the kind of writing you're putting out there. I'm gonna make some fake phone calls just so you can make some new some new phones because you do such a great job. I'm so excited to read more from you.
I appreciate you saying that since I only have two poems published in the world. Everything I've done. Yeah, I have a lot of insecurity about poetry because I wasn't
Wow.
taught or trained that way. I was taught in journalism and I've gotten a lot of feedback. So it just really lives on stage. It doesn't live in print. So that's something I'm working on getting over. So thank you.
Well, you know, totally understandable. I mean, you know, we're artists, we're sensitive about our stuff, as Erica Badu likes to say. So I totally get it. But just for me personally, I want to see more, and I hope more gets out there in print and performance. You did such a great job. So I really, really am thankful I got to hear you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brent, and everyone
Yep.
for coming.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so we got two more people left. We got a couple of minutes, so we may go over, but I'm gonna keep it moving. So, Tara, you are next up on my questionnaire list. So, what does your writing process look like on a daily basis? Because I know when people have, you know, being a mother, that can kind of sap away time from writing. So, how do you balance that?
Um,
Did we lose it?
I
Oh, there we go.
wake up early. Am I frozen again? Video. I wake up fairly early, and sometimes I just start to write. My son can be very quiet, and he loves to read, and so I get a lot of space to write. And what's important to me is I'm an herbalist, and so I spend a lot of time digging in the dirt and making medicine. And I get a lot of inspiration, like when I just go to the plants and dig around in the dirt. And so that inspires me, and I make the time to write. And it's just, sometimes it flows from that.
Yeah, no, that's I admire anybody who's balancing parenting and writing, because that's such a unique thing to be able to do, because you want to be able to devote the time to both. So anyone who pulls it off automatically get kudos from me, because I don't know how. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. So I want to make sure I got enough time to fit in our last person, LaMar. So LaMar, I'm going to end it with you with this question. So I saw in your bio, you put that you're a queer Black author. So
Yeah.
how do you feel like, what do you feel like is like being a Black queer author navigating, science fiction? Like, of what benefit is it to a Black queer author to have space in science fiction and fantasy and whatnot?
Well, I've never really published anything yet. I'm like a fledgling author right now. I'm just getting my career started. But I mean, it's for me, it's like the area. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, sci-fi and absurdism and surrealism is like the last frontier of the Black artist, in my opinion, because there hasn't been enough work done in that area, and so for me, I just want to continue to do what I do and just maybe even push the envelope a little bit. And because I mean, all my heroes are like absurdist authors, postmodernist authors, Monty Python, stuff like that. And I feel that in African art right now, African American art at least, a lot the absurdity, the surrealism, and all that's lacking, in my opinion. There's so few Afro-surrealist work out there. I mean, I'm not saying it's never been done, or but it's so ignored. It's criminally ignored, and it needs to be brought to the forefront, basically.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, that's actually a great point, because it's and that's why you guys exist, right? That's why that's
exactly.
why that's what y'all doing. Y'all are breaking these frontiers. Y'all are pushing through these boundaries that exist out here. And I can't speak for everybody at FIYAH, but I'm going to do it anyway right now. We're happy to see other groups of Black writers out here existing and thriving, and because so often the publishing industry tries to put us all under one umbrella and make us all this monolithic thing. So you guys existing is just it's amazing to me. So I'm so happy to have been here with you guys today.
Thank you.
I put us a little over time, so I apologize to the audience, but
sorry.
Thank you. No, it's not your fault. I'm the one running my mouth. So thank you again, guys. I appreciate you so much. Y'all guys were so talented. I loved everything. I'm going to be spending quite a bit of money today buying books, but that's okay. I'm happy to support y'all, and everyone else should too. Again, I'm dropping an interview for some of the authors that were here today on the FIYAH Magazine website. It will contain all of their social media links. Please check out their books. Please support them. This was wonderful, guys. I appreciate you all so much. So thank you for letting me host this.
Thank you, Brent. Take care. Thanks, readers. Bye.
You did a good job, Brent. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey and Rochelle.
Thank you, guys.
You guys were great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Audrey, for all your hard work.
Audrey, Rochelle in the background.
Yep.
Rochelle, Audrey,
amazing job.
AfroSurreal group for life, motherfuckers.
Yeah, y'all were great, man. Y'all really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Celebrations.